Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. This is going to be the first of 3 big end of year videos that I always do every year on the channel to wrap up the year in Avatar. So this one up first is going to be the top 5 Avatar and Korra story moments from 2023. And then probably more towards the end of December, you will see the 2023 Avatar year in review, as well as the 2024 kind of Avatar preview video. But just before we start this video, I do want to mention that I do have YouTube channel membership enabled on the channel. This is a very important way that anyone out there can help to support the channel. It's something that I don't mention in most of my videos because I don't want to just kind of constantly badger people with it, but in some of these bigger videos I feel it's something like this is the time where I have to mention it to just let people know that it exists, because while YouTube makes all these decisions behind the scenes that ultimately kind of affects kind of ad revenue for pretty much everyone, especially me as a kind of smaller kind of content creator, I do kind of rely on stuff like channel membership to really kind of help to see that growth on the channel. So you can join at either the Light Spirit or the Avatar tier. You'll get access to loyalty badges, which will eventually change over time to being the kind of Avatar State loyalty badge. But you also get custom emojis to use in the comments and also live chats. And then at the higher tier, at the Avatar tier, you will also get access to certain exclusive videos that I put up. It's usually one a month, videos about things that I don't usually do on the channel. So you'll see a few more gaming videos, some TCG stuff that isn't really the focus of my channel, that sort of things. It's a little bit more kind of like random, but I think it's a kind of unique kind of reward there. So support is much appreciated if you can spare it. But yeah, let's get into the video. So for the top 5 Avatar and Korra story moments for 2023, we first have to go over what story content did we actually get this year. That's what we're doing here. This is why this is an end of year video. We are highlighting all the story content stuff that came out this year. So we have to start with this. So we got the chibi comic Aang's Unfreezing Day. This, surprisingly, and this might be a surprise to a lot of people, yes, this is a 2023 release. This book's mass market release date was much earlier this year. It's not a particularly notable book, but it did come out this year, so it is up as a book where we can take scenes from for the list. We also got the free comic book day book for 2023, which was Star Wars, but also half of it was Avatar, and we got a small Avatar short story. It seems to be the one we were meant to get last year, but they just pushed it into this year. Bit messy. Unfortunately, a very forgettable story. Most people, I never really saw people talk about this. Part of that was the availability issues, that because they did Star Wars High Republic Adventures and because of some of the licensing publishing stuff related to that series, it meant certain regions didn't actually get this free comic. That certainly didn't help, but I think just in general, this book was low-key enough in terms of what actually happened that it just had so little impact on the year. It's a fine, small story, but we usually expect these stories to have a little bit more to them. Then we have Avatar Generations, which does actually have some new story content in it. Most of what it did, of course, was adaptation content for Avatar and Korra, but along with that was little bits of extra content, some with the Kyoshi era, some with the Aang era, of course. So we got a little bit of stuff here. Again, if you didn't play this very hardcore, you might not have seen all of this stuff, but it is stuff that was there. So that will be something we consider. This is probably the big page for story content. This is the main pieces of story content in the year. So we did get the Avatar Legends role-playing game, the settings toolkit for Republic City. So this is the first proper expansion book for the Avatar Legends role-playing game. Full-on, in-depth into Republic City, going over a lot of the lore, kind of background of the city. Not a lot of, I would say, significant new information about kind of characters that we kind of really know about. But some quite interesting stuff just about the city overall. I have one instance of this on the list. We'll get into it, but it's just one of those things where, like, because of the style of content that it is, it's never going to maybe have the biggest impact on the year because it is pure kind of fact file information style stuff, and not much of it is like hugely significant. We then have the two big releases of the year. So we got our novel for the year, and that is The Legacy of Yang Chen, Chronicles of the Avatar Book 4. So this brought the Yang Chen duology to a close before we move on to Roku going forward. So always a notable thing when we get a novel in a year. Full, multiple hundreds of page long book. Always fantastic to get these, so that is going to play a huge role on the list, obviously, because it's such a massive piece of content. And then we did get a proper full Avatar comic in Azula in the Spirit Temple. So this is the kind of most recent release for the year, that only came out very, very recently. But it is a notable one-shot comic because it's about Azula. It's the first time we're getting Azula content in like 7 years, and it was received very, very well. Final point is just, I think this probably should be mentioned. We did get another Avatar video game this year, Avatar Quest for Balance. Obviously, it wasn't received particularly well, but it does have very, very minor new story content. Mainly this new character that you can see on screen here, but it's not going to be on the list, unfortunately. This and the minor kind of like side quest style stuff in the game, I don't think is enough to justify a spot on the list anywhere, basically. So, with that out of the way, let's get started. What we're going to do here is 2 honourable mentions, and then the top 5 list, and we'll end with some final thoughts. So, jumping straight into the list, we have Honourable Mention 1, and this is from the Republic City RPG book, The Settings Toolkit. This is some interesting new General Iroh backstory that we did not know before this book came out. And this is basically his backstory, the backstory of his training. How did he come to, in a way, join the United Forces? Where did he develop those skills? So we get that here, and it's different than you would expect. Because he has kind of legendary figures in his family right in front of him, Zuko, Iroh, he kind of followed in their footsteps and wanted to do stuff in a kind of non-typical way. Not just go through the standard Fire Nation kind of schools and just get the positions that he would get by being someone in such a kind of high-profile position. He decided that he wanted to kind of, in a way, do that sort of, using the other nations, learning from them. And so he decided to, train, well, hopefully train with the best sailors in the world, this elite Northern Water Tribe kind of warrior group, their fleet. But he didn't meet their criteria, so he was forced to kind of do things a little bit differently. So he came to join this kind of infamous northern kind of fleet of vessels that they don't say are pirates, but they kind of describe like they know about kind of the kind of piracy tactics, and that like he learns like to be a very good sailor, but he also learns the seafaring espionage stuff that you would maybe typically more associate with pirates, and this is where he develops a lot of his skills. And you get the idea that like his family wasn't super into this idea that like, oh, this is slightly sketchy, but he comes out of it in a very good position, and this is what then basically prompts him to join the United Forces. This is where the family begins to sort of support this idea of like, okay, join this kind of, the united kind of nations forces effectively in the Avatar world. And from there, he rose up in the ranks. And it's nothing hugely detailed, but it's a nice little extra kind of detail on Iroh that we didn't know about before. So little bits and pieces like that are what make the Republic City RPG book quite interesting, and I would recommend, if you are a big Korra fan, to check it out, just because it was the only Korra content that we really got this year. So I feel I had to include a RPG material somewhere on this list. But we'll move to Honourable Mention 2. And like I just said there, I wanted to include the RPG on the list. I wanted to include Avatar Generations on the list as well, because, you know, the unfortunate situation where the game is going to be shutting down very shortly on December 2nd. It's a very unfortunate thing that we are going to miss out on opportunities to get more content like this. So the moment I'm going to highlight here from the new material Avatar Generations presented is Avatar Generations, Talarik Tug, his Polar Refuge scenario. So this is basically a post Rise of Kyoshi extra content. So Talarik Tug is basically the sort of second in command of Tagaka's Fifth Nation kind of forces, pirate group. And we see that after the events of basically the chapter The Iceberg in The Rise of Kyoshi and in Avatar Generations, of course, Tagaka is captured. And we see Talarik Tug manages to sort of escape with a few of the other Fifth Nation pirates. And they, you know, come back to this place. They're in control here. We see there's some kind of stragglers in terms of the people that they were trying to rescue, of course, from Tagaka's group. And it all builds up to this kind of big moment where Talarik Tug, like, the crew is in a really bad state because they've lost the battle badly at this point. They're stranded on this kind of iceberg, like the fleet has been scattered, and he feels they have to continue to fight. And this is when, obviously, like, there's soldiers coming in to try and get back the rest of the captured people. So the idea here is that Talarik Tug is kind of proposing that the crew make this kind of final stand, that they go down fighting against these soldiers and basically get killed or captured. And we get this kind of interesting moment where one of the captives, Hua here, kind of steps up and is just like, in a way, I've been captured for a while. You don't want to basically experience what I've experienced. Be happy that you have survived what just happened. Think about your crew and not just about this loyalty to Tagaka. She's been captured. She's not coming back for you. You're not really waiting for anyone. You know, live and fight another day. And it's a really strong moment from her because this is the group of people that captured her and is using her as this bargaining chip in the kind of Yoon negotiations that just happened. But she steps up and just kind of tries to care about other people. Like, she just wanted to survive after she was captured, and she doesn't want other people to get hurt. And this hits Talarik Tug enough to where he does signal the retreat and leaves and kind of does live to fight another day. And it's clear that there was going to be more story as we went forward with Avatar Generations about Talarik Tug, because we were even hearing in the Aang story content about like a journal he left behind, treasures that he found as the sort of, I suppose, leader for a while of the Fifth Nation. Really, really interesting new character. He's a really good unit in the game as well. I used him quite a bit, so I just wanted to highlight that because I felt like there was other things I maybe could have chose here, like the new extra Haru and Tyro content we got post the Imprisoned update. But I went for this Kyoshi content because I think it was a real sign of like, this is what this game was capable of doing with the kind of less well-known content. And I think they did a really good job with this moment here. That will then bring us into the top 5 list itself. So, number 5, first Legacy of Yang Chen moment on the list. I have Yang Chen's team tricks, captures, and interrogates Kalyan to get key information for Yang Chen towards the end of the book. This is from a variety of chapters, of course. When we get into the ending, we're cutting back and forth between Yang Chen and Shai Si, and then Kavik and the rest of the team. So it's in Extraction, Choosing Sides, Casualties, and Truth, where this whole sequence kind of plays out. But I think it's a great sequence here because this is sort of Kavik's big moment that we've been building up to. How will he finally kind of fix his relationship with the team? How will he do this one final gesture to kind of truly convince Yang Chen that you can trust me? I have fully at this point made amends for the betrayal in the last book, and he has to, in a way, do this kind of sacrifice play here, and that is finally truly go against his brother. He at this point knows that his brother doesn't super care for him outside of this kind of ideal family scenario that he wants to eventually get towards. So it's at this point Kavik truly chooses Yang Chen over his brother, the reverse of the decision in the previous book. And you know, they're slow to reveal it. They attempt to do a little bit of a, you know, you don't know what the plan is. Oh, is Kavik up to no good here a little bit? Is it a repeat of the first book? But no. What happens here is it's this pretty clever sequence where they have to feign the idea of almost like the group imploding a little bit. That, oh, Kavik is, like, the rest of the group is suspicious of Kavik, and so in the middle of him trying to escape from Kalyan, he gets stabbed by Jujinta, and this forces Kalyan into a bit of a panicked kind of situation. And the whole time through, you really get the idea, looking back on it, that it's Kavik using his brother's kind of care for him against him. That's Kalyan's weakness, ultimately. And so Kalyan, trying to get medical aid for his brother, walks into this house, and the trap is sprung. And we get the biggest moment across both books for Taegum and Akudan, as they reveal the true extent of their skill, their kind of bending abilities. Akudan is revealed to be a bender in this scene, and the two just take down the basically almost undefeatable character that is Kalyan, who has been presented in the two books as being this incredible waterbender and sort of spy master, effectively. You can, if he doesn't want you to find him, you can't find him, and he is supremely deadly. He is an assassin and an exceptional waterbender. Are these two kind of like older characters here who the book has led you to believe had more kind of like simple bodyguard duties, but then the twist comes in of like, no, they would only be put in those bodyguard positions guarding the Platinum during the Platinum Affair if they were the absolute best of the best in the water tribes. And so we get the twist, and I love what they do here, because you see Taegum make the really clever move here to, he blocks Kalyan's waterbending attack, sends the water away, preferring a hand-to-hand fight against this master waterbender over a direct waterbending battle. And then Akudan reveals that he's a waterbender and that like he can do fancy waterbending stuff because he's missing an arm. And they do this clever kind of thing where they wrap him up, they suck all the water out of that kind of wrap, and they just have him fully captured. But the scene kind of goes beyond that, where it's not just the cool action to capture Kalyan, it's also that then they immediately show their skill at interrogation and sort of like acting. They go to like, oh, you seem to care about your brother. Well, he seems a bit hurt over here. What if we make that worse? Now will you speak? And they eventually draw the information, the signal for Thapa to attack, out of Kalyan, and immediately the trick is like revealed. That, oh, Kavik's not actually that badly injured. Jujinta is an expert with a knife. He gave Kavik a wound that would bleed quite a bit but was not bad, and they made it look worse by using blood lacquer. So it's the multiple layers of this that they just take down this like near undefeatable character with expert kind of teamwork, some clever acting, and then I think most interestingly of all, that idea of like just they used Kalyan's love for his brother against him, and it's like what they were kind of forced to do to kind of end this conflict. But it brings to an end kind of like the sequence of like, once this is all done, Kavik is back on good terms with the rest of the group, and they wait for Yang Chen, hoping she's successful. I just really like that. It was a really, I think, strong way to end the kind of main Kavik kind of plot of the book. But that's my number 5. Number 4 is this scene, also from Legacy of Yang Chen, from the chapter Among Friends. Yang Chen speaks to Chief Oyaluk, and we get at the very least two, but there's so many more things going on in this scene. Two big moments. The Order of the White Lotus, we find out, is responsible for the Platinum Affair. We also find out that Akudan is Oyaluk's cousin. So Oyaluk, this is what's so interesting about this scene. This is his first proper scene in the book. Otherwise, we've just been told that he is the chief of the Water Tribe. We got this vague mention that, like, oh, Akudan, are you maybe this person who's related to this? But it was never confirmed. It gets confirmed here. And you get the two sides of this. You get to see basically the idea of Oyaluk as this leader, this kind of, politics person in the world. Why he made the decisions that he did kind of surrounding the Platinum Affair. Because it was him and the Fire Lord that basically made it happen. And so we find out that, one, he just followed the advice of his advisors over a game of Pai Sho. And this is where Yang Chen connects the dots of, like, based on stuff that, like, a Unarak had said before, like, that she basically has the ear of the world leaders. Well, it's because Order of the White Lotus members are in with all of the world leaders, whispering in those ears. And we do find out that, yes, the Order of the White Lotus effectively, through, whispering into the ears of the Fire Lord and the Water Tribe Chief, made the Platinum Affair happen. Now, obviously, Oyaluk, you find out that, like, okay, that means it wasn't a super personal thing what he did. He just followed the advice of his advisors. But it almost makes it worse that it was just this idea of, like, oh yeah, we'll go ahead with that. That sounds like a good idea to do, to completely kind of, like, basically dethrone the Earth King and kind of put someone else on the Earth King throne that we can have more control over. Just them playing the game more so than anything. Thinking that they're above it all when that's not how it should be done. But then we go to the idea of, like, Yang Chen tries to convince Oyaluk that you can, at the meeting coming up, the convocation, you can, along with the Fire Lord, make a choice there to end the Platinum Affair. If you show Earth King Feishan respect and just, like, truly apologize and attempt to make amends for what happened, we can end this and the world can go back into a better situation. But the complexities come into play because he's heard rumblings that the Earth King is preparing an army, that, like, basically if things go wrong, a war is going to happen. And so he kind of feels that the only thing he can do, the only sort of logical choice in a way that he can make is to just stand his ground and in a way prepare his own army so that he is not caught off guard by an attack coming in. And then it switches. Yang Chen goes to leave, but she realizes that, oh, Chief Oyaluk wants to say something more, but he's almost too emotional to get it out. He finally says it, and he's basically like, how is Akudan? How is my cousin Akudan? Is he okay? And Yang Chen just has to be like, yeah, he's fine. And he's like, oh, surely he knows, like, why I had to, like, not free him, basically. That I had to choose the nation and its affairs over my own cousin. I had to choose the logical thing to do over the kind of the human, the family thing to do here. And she kind of turns his logic back around on him and basically says that, like, yeah, he probably gets it. After all, it was the logical thing to do. Just throwing that back, that, it's not always the right thing to do. And that's, in a way, part of Yang Chen's struggle over the course of the whole book of she kind of, in a way, wants to be the one who can make the logical choice every single time, but can't remove the human aspect of everything from all these situations, like some of these other world leaders can. So it's just a small chapter, in a way, right towards the start of the book. It's the only scene Oyaluk is in, but I think it's fantastic, the depth at play here. Like, our first scene, Avatar talking to the Water Tribe Chief, and so much happens in it that I think highlights what the novels are capable of doing. It feels like a scene that, like, a comic would maybe struggle to do, but the novel format allows you to do something like this that's just very, very strong. Then we get to number 3, also from the Legacy of Yang Chen, and that is from the chapter called The Price, the sudden and tragic death of both Nujian and Rai Te. again, this is a small chapter. You think at this point in the book everything has gone right. They have a little bit of information that they gathered from kind of Chai-Sea's island about Project Unanimity. They have found 2 kids who are sort of survivors of the training there, including Raite, who is a potential combustion bender. He has passed at least one stage of the process. And this chapter is so interesting because it really does come out of nowhere. They're just talking about how, like, oh, we have to relocate these kids and do what's best for them. And we get to this situation where, like, they're having this open conversation about, like, in a way, the value of Raite, how much the world's going to want him if they find out, like, who and what he is. And then you get the later on reveal that, like, oh, he was awake listening to this the whole time. But there's still that sudden shift then in the moment where Raite asks, like, are you going to take down Chai-Se? And they all think, like, oh, he wants revenge against the people who basically tortured him through this training. But no, he's asking, are you going to take down one of the people who could, like, pay me and use me for my skills so that I can be in a successful position? That he has come to view himself as this valuable asset, kind of a little bit like Thapa has. This child has this such this morphed kind of view of themselves because of what's happened, that this is what they value over the chance for, like, their life to kind of restart again. And so realizing that they're going to kind of, in a way, take away that opportunity for him to make money, he goes to Combustion Band, and no one really sees it coming. Kavik sees it, like, absolute last second, but can't do anything about it. All he can do is maybe, like, push Yang Chen down to the ground. But it's Nujian who steps in to block the blast, and they basically both end up sort of, like, killing each other. Because Nujian sort of, like, smothers the blast, he takes the blast, and all the micro kind of explosions go off, and Nujian is killed. But also, Raite, as someone who has not mastered the technique, sort of forced the combustion bending blast out, like, through his skull. So he's been hit with combustion blast stuff, but has, like, basically killed himself by making a hole in his skull. And it's just brutal because a child and the companion, like the animal guide, the animal companion of the Avatar, has been killed in this super sudden, shocking moment. And Yang Chen has obviously been struggling through this book with, like, still having issues over the death of Jetson all those years ago. But now here's this other death that kind of, in a way, was avoidable. And we were in such a positive position. We're going into the kind of final negotiations, like, we're finally going to maybe try and, you know, get one over on Chai-Se. But Yang Chen's going into that now in the worst possible state imaginable, with the loss of her kind of best friend here, Nujian. Really tragic. And I the reason I placed this quite highly over maybe bigger general plot moments towards the end of the book is that I can't remember the last time a moment in a book kind of did this to me in terms of my reaction, where, like, I finished the chapter, just kind of closed the book over, and just kind of sat there in silence for a minute or two, just, like, considering what I just read, just unable to believe that they just did this so suddenly out of the blue. I was not expecting Nujian, of all characters, to be killed. But even that, added to that, it's the tragedy of Raite as well. Even though he kind of caused this incident to happen, it is still deeply tragic that he felt that this is something he had to do. And throughout all of this, that's the big kind of emotion that kind of comes out of this one. So I just felt like this has to be on the list because it's just a gut punch of a moment, and one of the real moments where, like, yeah, I remember my reaction to reading this for the first time. Then we move on to number 2 on the list, also from Legacy of Yang Chen. From Blinking First and also the Burial chapters, we have Yang Chen turns the tables on Chai-Se and then defeats Thapa. So it's 2 rather big moments, but they happen in sequence. Part of how she turns the tables on Chai-Se basically is her proceeding to be like, oh yeah, I can signal Thapa and I know exactly where he is, watch this kind of type thing. But it's both, because I think the defeat of Chai-Si is a super important moment in this book. How does Yang Chen actually turn the tables on basically the controller of the situation? She's been in control this whole time, ever since she got Thappa back right towards the start of the book. Yang Chen has been behind her because she doesn't know where the secret combustion vendor is. He could appear from anywhere and just blow someone up like that. So this is what the importance of my number 5 on the list is, the team getting this information to her through Jujinta about the signal for Thappa being the 3 strikes of the gong. And that's what she does here, is just she has been kind of basically feigning the idea of like, oh, I lost my bison, I'm in a really bad situation, Chai-Si is completely getting the better of me. Will Yang Chen agree to this deal, basically, that like, if you support me to get what I want, which is full control for my family for all time of Jondari, a very reasonable request, but in doing so, you are basically sort of in a way justifying the torture and devastation that you did on that island in terms of getting these combustion benders. That's what Yang Chen can't agree to. And so what she does here is she forms this kind of cylinder of earth basically around herself and Chai-Si. She signals Thappa, and the idea is that it becomes this game of who will blink first. It's, do you want to die, Chai-Si? Because I'm willing to die. And it's who will give up first. And Chai-Si, I love this scene because it's Chai-Si trying to be like, oh, but no, you should give up first because you have more to lose, because you're the Avatar. Like, what would the world do if they didn't have their Avatar? The amount of regrets you are going to have during like the time that the Avatar is not around. Are you sure you want to do this? And this is the big moment. We've been building up to this for so long, and it's just this idea of Yang Chen laughs at this concept. And in a way, if you've been following the book, you laugh too, because you know the idea of basically Chai-Si almost like guilt tripping Yang Chen into giving up because of like the regrets you could possibly have is a preposterous idea with Yang Chen, because we know she already has so many regrets. She has seen the regrets of basically all the past avatars. More than any avatar, she knows this situation. And because of that, like, she's so experienced with it, and she's kind of just like, well, unlike you, I'll come back. Like, there will be another avatar. I'll have my own regrets, but every avatar has regrets. The avatar will come back and, like, help the world. But then she turns it around and is like, but you can't come back. You've only got this kind of one chance here. And what about your own regrets? Like, do you have everything in order here if you were to die here? Do you trust all the people that you treat so well, that you've hired to like protect your legacy, your wealth, your family, like your child? Do you trust those people when you're gone to look after your son? And pretty much the second she drops that line, Chai-Si just gives up, fully capitulates, and it's over. Because she knows that, like, this is the way that she kind of treats people being turned against her. She can't ultimately trust the people that she has hired to treat her son in the way that she would want to be. She needs to be there for him and have the control over the full situation. And so Yang Chen wins in this moment here. And she does force Chai-Si to be like, no, you have to double and triple down on you have given up here, and you are basically going to be mine. So it's to the point where Yang Chen fully turns Chai-Si into being her asset. That's what we learn at the end of the book. But then, of course, we still have to deal with Thappa. There's an attack coming in here. She goes Avatar state, she moves the building, she reveals where Thappa is. And then we get the kind of sequence of like, okay, here's what happened from the start of the book. Here's how she kind of got out of the Thappa explosion kind of thing right at the start of the book. And here's how she's going to do it again. She's actually learned through, the surprise thing that like, oh, Yingsu's actually alive, and she's been training with Yingsu to perfect countering combustion blast with airbending and this ability to void out a space at a distance, like completely create a pocket where there's no air at a distance. And if you do that at the kind of the explosion point of a combustion blast, you can completely nullify it. So you get this incredible moment, the big conflict between the main hero, the Avatar, and the main villain in terms of combat potential in the book. An Avatar versus a combustion bender, two of the most powerful abilities in the world. And the actual action here is the start of a combustion blast. So it's like pop, pop, like nothing. Just a little bit of like air kind of rolling around the place. That they've basically both done incredibly powerful and straining techniques, but there's no result in the middle at all. And Thoppa does it again. She voids it out again. He tries to do another combustion blast, but 3 in a row for him, a slow combustion bender, he basically can't handle this, and he effectively explodes himself at this point. The explosions goes off. She's forced to basically bury him underground, hence the name of the chapter, The Burial. And she just powerfully earthbends him into the ground. And this is a notable moment as well for Yang Chen in terms of like, she realizes in this moment, she effectively has to resign him to his death in this moment to save other people from this giant explosion going off. She has to bury him under the ground here to protect other people. And she's aware of what she's done, the kind of magnitude of like, I have chosen to, kill him in this moment. But it's a hugely powerful moment. Like it's such a powerful ability, the ability to void out an area like that at will, and how effortlessly ultimately she kind of defeats Thoppa, despite how powerful combustion benders are. So a huge moment, both in terms of just the kind of tactics, the character arc of the situation, more which I see, but then Yang Chen's abilities with the defeat of Thoppa. So I do think, like, in terms of this as like the ending of the book, like they did a good job at like the culmination of these two kind of plot points. So this is why it's my number 2 on the list. Which then brings us into number 1. So number 1, we finally get to Azula in the Spirit Temple, and the scene where Azula is shown the moment that she was discovered to be a firebender by her parents. So you can see from the page there, I have the page which more has the dialogue that I think is really, really impactful. But this whole kind of 3-4 page sequence of young Azula, she's set the turtle duck toy on fire. Ursa finds her. We get that amazing Ursa expression of concern, fear, but also trying not to scare Azula with her reaction, because Azula's expecting a positive reaction from this big moment, because Ozai is super happy he has his prodigal firebender, but her mother isn't super happy about this. And it's the two perceptions that you have of this moment. From Azula, you get why she looks back on this moment and is kind of like, why wasn't my mom happy for me in this super happy moment? I can't believe that that's not the case. And that's why we're sort of shown that like almost creepy ideal version of Ursa in this scene. Like, what if she was super happy? But because we know what happened to Ursa, that's why the scene comes across as creepy. It's drawn that way as well. But obviously you know the idea of Ursa in this situation has to know what this means. Ozai realizing, I've got a powerful firebender on my hands. This is the moment I lose my daughter to him. There's only so much that I can do to stop this from going the way I think it's going to go, because Ursa herself has so little power in the situation. And it's that really understanding the Ursa perspective that kind of really highlights just how messy the Fire Nation family is. Why this whole idea of like the ideal version of the situation doesn't work, and it's why ultimately like Azula rejects it, because she knows it's absolutely not true. She kind of wishes deep down she had the fun, happy family times, but she also rejects the idea that like it's unrealistic to kind of think that things could be that way. And deep down she sort of knows. And that's what's so significant about the page I have on screen there. You know, my mother wasn't happy I was a firebender. She was afraid for me, afraid of me. And I love that kind of contrast, because you can see that Azula kind of understands the situation, but not fully, in a way. She still has that conflict within herself of like, I can see that she was afraid for me, that this was the moment she lost me to Ozai. But because Azula has this whole idea that she kind of blames her mother for so much of what happened, that no, this is the she thinks of me as a monster situation. She was afraid of me in that moment, that I was a firebender, and this is where it all started. And it's the debate within herself of like, effectively, what Azula needs to do to grow is to really get to the point where she can understand this scene as 100% as Ursa was afraid for her, not of her in this moment. And that's what's so great about this. I think it's a fantastic sort of centerpiece scene from Azula in the Spirit Temple that represents, I think, so much of the conflict within Azula's life, while also giving you like an interesting Ursa scene as well at the same time. And this is a very Azula focused book, but in terms of getting this flashback sequence that's brand new, the little bit of extra character focus for Ursa also, I think, really helps to make this scene and push it over the edge, because you just see this is how awful and messy this whole situation is, and it's because of Ozai. That this is a scene that ultimately Azula remembers as like, oh, this was happy, like my father was happy for me, but she doesn't realize that this is the moment where it really all started to go wrong, and she suddenly became the focus of his attention, and this is where things really went off the rails for kind of the whole family in a way. So that's my number one moment from Azula in the Spirit Temple. I debated, like, should I include on the list another Azula in the Spirit Temple moment? But what I went for, and then the reason I have like 4 Yang Chen moments and only 1 Azula in the Spirit Temple moment, is more because of sort of the scope of both of these books. The Azula comic is super hyper focused on pure Azula character exploration. And so I felt it would have been a little bit repetitive to have 3, even 2, I think, moments from the book on the list. Whereas I think it being the 1 slot, I think is a good way to kind of highlight that in terms of just the exploration of 1 topic, I do think the Azula comic is probably the overall best thing of the year. But it doesn't have the scope maybe to earn lots of spots on the list. Whereas the Yang Chen book has multiple characters. It's a full multiple hundreds of page book long thing that has plots for Yang Chen, for Kavik, for the villains, for minor characters. And I think there's a sense where like each of the 4 Yang Chen scenes that I chose is quite different than each other, representing quite a few kind of things that the book has going on. Whereas I think multiple Azula moments would just be all ultimately highlighting relatively similar moments. But this is just this sense of variety. There's so many other great moments from the Yang Chen book, from the Azula comic that I could have chosen. Like, I actually really like the Azula Zirine discussion at the start of the book. I love Ty Lee and her action scene at the start of Azula in the Spirit Temple. And then most of the dialogue back and forth throughout the entire book is in Azula in the Spirit Temple is fantastic. This is what I went for, just to have that bit of variety across the list and not just be basically highlighting every single Azula in the Spirit Temple scene. But just to highlight that, I do think this moment in particular was my absolute favorite from the year in terms of just a scene that was just done, written perfectly in my mind. So that brings us into the wrap up here, kind of final thoughts on the year for story content specifically. We'll talk about this more, of course, in the 2023 year in review. But in general, it's hard to complain when in a year we got a novel and a notable comic, a strong novel and comic. But I think we all went into the year expecting there to be more content this year, especially when it comes to the comics. Like the fact that we did go a year without having a Korra comic. We had no Avatar comic last year. This year we have no Korra comic. this is where it's kind of very difficult to understand what's happening with Dark Horse, with Avatar Studios. I thought the whole point of Avatar Studios was that this stuff would get a little bit more smooth. It'd be a smoother process to make Avatar and Korra comics happen side by side. But it looks like it's only maybe just about going to happen next year. Well behind where it probably should have been, given Avatar Studios properly formed in like 2021. A weird one. Like, obviously the Yang Chen book and the Azula comic are fantastic additions to story content overall. But quantity wise, given where we're building towards, it's not where we need it to be ultimately. Avatar Generations, I think, showed potential with its original content, but layoffs followed by the upcoming December shutdown of the game means that we have now lost a great avenue for adaptation content and small but regular new updates. Stuff like the Kyoshi Update Part 2, more new Kyoshi content, Yang Chen stuff coming into the game. We're going to miss out on all of this amazing art that will add to our appreciation of the written material. We're not going to get that anymore. That's the real loss of Avatar Generations. More so than just your thoughts on the gameplay and did you actually think it was a good game. We miss out on a lot of just general stuff that I think all Avatar fans would like because this game doesn't exist anymore. There's no other real avenue for them to put out like official art for some of this other stuff for the most part. So when are we going to get some of that stuff? That's the real loss. So the final thought really is just that I do think 2024 has to be a very strong year for Avatar in terms of story content, as the year leading directly into 2025, where Avatar Studios is actually going to lead with that movie in late 2025. But we do expect 2025, especially once we're a couple of months into 2025, for the real build to that movie to have started. Like, once we start to get information, trailers and stuff like that, that's Avatar Studios in play. But 2024, like the year before all of this, I still think it needs to be strong to kind of set the stage. Now, Netflix Avatar is, of course, I think going to do quite a bit of that in just a couple of months. But I hope that they can get things back on track. It looks like they might just be able to, but I hope they're able to keep delays in check and that they have more announcements, more books planned to really push things into a kind of stronger position, because I think the general thoughts on this year is just that, like, while I really find it difficult to complain about the year that had the Azula and the Yang Chen book, I also feel that, like, there were quite large portions of the year where we probably could have done with there being a little bit more significant story content overall. So that's pretty much it. I will end by thanking my Avatar tier channel members. We have KD Love, Persian Lagoon, Callum Fishik, Brit in Toyland, Martine Monterosa, and Cash D's. Your support really helps to keep the channel going. And again, anyone out there who wants to help support the channel, I would really appreciate it if you could become a channel member. But of course, it is not a requirement. Avatar tier or the smaller Light Spirit tier, it all is super, super helpful for me to just really, get that support to be like, yes, this is why I do this. People really liking what I'm doing, and the fact that my channel, I think, is quite different than a lot of other Avatar channels out there in terms of what I offer. The support helps to keep that going. So yeah, that basically has been the end here. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. What were your top 5 story moments from the year? Maybe you don't have a top 5. What was your top 2 or 3 moments from the year? Your favorite moment from each of the main things? Favorite part of the Azula comic? Favorite moment in the Yang Chen novel? That's the sort of stuff I want to know in the comments below to discuss the stuff that happened this year. But yes, that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.